Our next speaker is a member and in fact the founder of the Julian Assange Supporters Alice Springs Action Group, Margaret Richardson, who has been instrumental in establishing the group in Alice Springs and fighting on an intransigent basis for the support for Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning. As we said, at the centre of Australia, only 30 kilometres away from Pine Gap. I invite you to give her a very warm welcome.
Hello, my name is Mags. I've travelled here from Alice Springs to be here today, as Zach has pointed out. Julian Assange is an amazing individual and someone with immense courage. We all know this, and that is why we're here today. For Julian to be imprisoned for one night is a complete travesty. When I saw him being dragged from the Ecuadorian embassy early last year in such a cruel and inhumane way, it haunted me. And that image sent me on a journey of which there is no return. I asked myself, who is this man? And began to research as much as I could about him. I discovered pretty quickly that Assange was the subject of a monstrous frame-up and persecution which had involved the collusion and conspiracy of the United States governments, its allies, and intelligence agencies. And it was all based on a web of lies and media blackout. I began to sob uncontrollably, and I couldn't sleep for days. Unfolding before me was a very clear miscarriage of justice that had cost this extraordinary man 10 years of his life. He knowingly risked everything to bring truth to the world about war crimes and government corruption. I knew in my heart I had to do everything to defend Assange that I could, and I couldn't stop until he was free. This was a life-defining moment for me, and I wanted to find others who were doing something to also defend him. I scoured the net again and came across the Socialist Equality Party, and I learnt that they were planning to hold a rally in Sydney to free Assange and Manning. And immediately I booked a flight to Sydney. On my return to Alice Springs, more inspired and more determined than ever, I regularly connected with Assange supporters by phone in Sydney, in Newcastle with my friend Danielle, and through Facebook, and I began to link in with Assange activists worldwide. More and more of the jigsaw pieces of the conspiracy against Assange began to fall into place. And the more I learnt, the more I needed to know, and the more I wanted to do to defend this man. I formed a 3-page to-do list, which I'm happy to share, and I wrote to the Greens, my political party, urging them to launch a public campaign in defence of Assange. The minimal response that I received was highly disappointing, to say the least. I wrote to Get Up and Amnesty several times, but their responses were negative. The question is, why? Walking around Alice Springs, wearing a Free Assange t-shirt, the lack of interest seemed to be palpable, and I despaired. Surely there must be people in Alice willing at least to have a conversation with me about Assange. Then the Socialist Equality Party in Sydney suggested a couple of their members could fly to Alice to hold a public meeting, and this was music to my ears. I began holding information stalls at the market and at the shopping centre, and gradually people began approaching me for information. One such person offered to help me on stalls and help me to advertise the SEP rally. The need to commence a group in Alice Springs became apparent. Within a week of the SEP's public meeting, a Facebook page was established, a group name was allocated, the Julian Assange Supporters Alice Springs, or JASAS Action Group, and a group meeting attended by approximately 15 people. Although our numbers fluctuate, we are an active movement and we are building an awareness, and we're talking to people about Assange's situation and about the real reasons behind his persecution. Even if the numbers are small to begin with, it doesn't matter, because you're building an awareness among ordinary people, which is the only way forward. And you do this in the knowledge that there is a definite groundswell of support internationally for Assange's release. Once people see the deeper issues, and that is that we are all Julian Assange, that all our rights are being threatened, and if the extradition of Julian is not prevented, then they respond. The fact that we've established an Assange Action Group in Alice Springs on the doorstep of the United States Pine Gap spy base is a powerful message to the United States and its corrupt and illegal attempts to extradite Assange. It's also a message to the Australian government, which is allowing this to happen. Julian has been persecuted to within an inch of his life, and we have to keep dispelling the myths and patiently correcting people's misconceptions. The first line of defence of Assange is educating yourself. Once you take up the fight to free Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning, you will learn many things about the multi-layered complexities of Julian's persecution. It's all driven by capitalist greed and war. You will also learn very quickly that you cannot rely on politicians to get Assange released. Only a groundswell of support from ordinary people and youth demanding his release will achieve that. Over the past few weeks, our action group has collected signatures for a petition calling on the Alice Springs Council to pass a resolution opposing the extradition of Assange. When this was presented to last month's council meeting, one councillor walked out. Another wanted to shut down all debate because it was, I quote, in real conflict with our community. And we have a very large American contingent in town who work with the town on many issues, unquote. In other words, don't do anything to upset the United States government. This is a microcosm of what is going on in the Australian Parliament. Irrespective of whether the resolution is passed or not, and it will be debated this Monday night, our initiative was very revealing and points to the attitude of the Australian governments, Liberal and Labor alike, towards Assange and why they have thrown him to the Washington Wolves. Julian Assange is a light in a very dark world. His light must never be allowed to go out. We cannot allow him to be handed to his persecutors for 10 minutes, let alone for 175 years. I've been an environmental campaigner and activist for many years of my life, but Assange's situation underpins everything. We won't have a voice for any environmental issue or any other issue if we do not have honest information, freedom of speech, and if we are silenced. Therefore, everything hinges on the fight for Julian Assange. Let me emphasise again, you cannot rely on the parliamentary pollies because they support the United States and Australian military alliance and Washington's great war machine. The release of Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning is up to us, the people, to form grassroots organisations and develop a movement from below. There has to be an uprising of the masses to free Assange and Manning. Please join me in this urgent international fight.